Hello to everyone. Thank you all for joining me at this time. My name is Shavi Zane, and I'm coming on at this time to do a reading for the collective. This particular reading is in regards to healing the inner child. I've had quite a few people ask me, or they'll say, people tell me all the time that I need to heal my inner child. But what does that mean? I know that I need to heal, but what does that really mean? And so you end up in a position where you recognize that you have things that you suppressed from your childhood, and you recognize that many of these things have stagnated your forward movement in adulthood, but that's about as far as it goes because a large part of you has suppressed many of those things in order to continue to survive. But the problem with that is it keeps you from being able to thrive. You don't want to be in survival mode. You want to be in thriving mode. And so when you suppress things from your childhood and you don't do the work to heal so that you can have your breakthrough, you end up staying in survival mode for a good majority of your life. Many people, all of their lives, because they never recognized or they never took the time out to really go within and do the work. So this reading is going to be surrounding the wounds. So the first question that I have here is, where are the wounds? Where are they? So I'm going to definitely be using my cards to see where these wounds have been buried or hidden. We want to target the wounds so we can start to heal them. So let me see. I'm going to use several different decks, okay? Because I want to be able to, I'm going to pull multiple cards here from multiple decks, and then we're going to talk about it, okay? Oh, that just fell. Hold on, y'all. Okay, so we're going to start here, and then we're going to keep moving forward. So the first card I have coming out is the three of, this card of celebration in the reverse, okay? This is like the Three of Cups in reverse. I feel like there was a large part of your childhood where you might have been around the wrong types of people in your childhood, okay? Or, as a child, it's kind of hard to, you don't really have a lot of control over who you're around. So this could be in terms of your parents maybe bringing certain people around you that just wasn't ideal in terms of being good role models for you. Um, the Three of Cups in reverse can also indicate people who are in division. It's not actual genuine friendships or, relationships. A lot of gossip, a lot of envy, a lot of maybe even drinking or just the type of energy of partying, but amongst the wrong types of people. I feel like in your childhood, you might have been around people who were very selfish. You might have even been the type of child who had to withhold a lot of those things that you knew intuitively within, a lot of your creative gifts. Some of you have gifts that you have kept suppressed since childhood because of the types of people that you were around. Very selfish people. Obviously, not everyone, but I feel like there was an energy of people who just wasn't balanced, okay? Maybe even having to deal with people who were not happy with life. And so because they lack fulfillment, because I have lack of fulfillment here, um, they operated from their lower chakras, which, the sacral chakra coming out here that strongly indicates pleasure seeking type of behaviors. And so your wounds begin from being surrounded around people who really lacked a passion or an excitement or a zeal for life. And because they lacked that, they was not able to be openly or emotionally available to you. Whether this is your parents, your grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, immediate family. There was something about you feeling as if you had to hold back a lot. Okay? Um I feel like you was not able to speak your truth a lot in childhood as well. It was something about you feeling as if your throat chakra was blocked. You was not able to communicate your truth here to a lot of people that was around you. Anger and aggression is here. So you might have even had people around you who were very aggressive in their energy. Obviously, if you have a lack of fulfillment or a lack of zeal for life, then you tend to go towards false measures of pleasure. And by the time that wears off, whatever that looks like, whether it be through marijuana, some people using harder drugs, pills, alcohol, sex, whatever the case may be, food, shopping, work, these people had a lack of fulfillment in life. And so when those things ran out, or when they was not able to use one of those measures of false stimulation, they were very angry and very aggressive. And so you found yourself having to be very guarded from childhood to protect yourself. Many of you was very awakened, even as a child, though, with the consciousness card coming out. You had a strong intuitive gifts that you had to really withhold and keep back. You have the miser here. You had to withhold a lot of these jewels that you possessed, because maybe you was around people who literally, they had no connection spiritually, because they was operating in their lower nature and their carnal nature so much that you had to withhold these gifts. And I feel like ultimately what ended up happening is you ended up suppressing your gifts. You buried these gifts. So let's see. What else is coming out here? You have here not attractive enough. So insecurities from childhood. Generally, children don't have insecurities in terms of how they look until they have outside, external people that, pretty much try to place a certain image on them. And so you may have had people around you who might have compared you. If you have multiple siblings, maybe you was compared to your other siblings in a way that was not positive for yourself, or maybe you noticed that other siblings were being praised or getting compliments from your loved ones, and you did not receive that. But whatever the case may be, this would be going back to the root chakra, and then in terms of insecurity, that would also be dealing with your sacral chakra. So there was something here that caused you to not feel as if you were attractive enough, whether it's physically or just having that energy to be able to attract loving connections to you. I want to bring this card out because this is at the bottom of the deck. This says mental disorder. And I only want to bring this out because, I feel that for those of you who have gifts, who had these gifts since you were a child, you may have begun to suppress them because those people that were around you, because they had no spiritual connection, they might have made you think that you had a mental disorder when you tried to express certain things. Maybe you was the type of child that had dreams. Maybe you was the type of child that actually saw things, okay, spirits or whatever the case may be, or you might have been able to tap in and whatever it is you was able to do. You possessed a lot of jewels, and I feel like your throat chakra ended up getting blocked off because these messages were not received. People were not receiving your intuitive wisdom, this higher level of consciousness that you had since you was a child. So some of your wounds came from being shut down. The spiritual aspect of yourself, those spiritual gifts that was divinely given to you, were shut down and cut off. You had some people around you in your childhood who was very materialistic, whoever this is, very materialistic, and was all about themselves. It was all about, some of them were hoarders, okay? I'm hearing some of your relatives were hoarders, but they was all about getting as much as they could get at any cost, even if it meant being around the wrong people. And they still were not pleased with life. So you eyewitnessed those loved ones, those adults that were in your life. You eyewitnessed these people constantly searching to create this foundation for themselves, but it was a false foundation, because it was really just about having more materialism, feeling as if they had more than others. I feel like your parents, or for some of you, this is your parents, they might have had a competitive energy with their so-called friends. It was not genuine friendships that they had with these people, and you eyewitnessed this in your energy of being more conscious as a child. And I feel like at that time as a child, your third eye chakra was very much so open, okay? You was able to see these things very clearly. I feel like much of this did not get past you. And you had parents who, or close relatives, who were so selfish in their energy that they was willing to sacrifice genuine relationships just to be around people who were just like them, fake, okay? Who was all about pleasure-seeking behaviors, partying. But I feel like this is what caused you to believe that you might have had some sort of mental disorder, or that something was wrong with you, that you was different. And this caused you to be insecure about yourself because they were not accepting of your gifts. Yeah, lacks empathy. So you had people around you who they lacked the ability to be empathetic. Like I said, very selfish people whose heart chakras were very much so blocked off because they were so focused in on materialism that love was definitely not the dominant energy when it came to how they interacted with you. It was more about the money and materialism, false friendships, pleasure seeking behaviors. And this is what you had to eyewitness coming up. And so, because you had so many people around you that lacked empathy, they did not empathize with the fact that you were different. They did not embrace that. They did not see it as being a gift. If anything, they just made you feel different. They made you feel as if you were mentally imbalanced. They made you feel as if you was not attractive enough, or that you was not good enough. And so I feel like you started to suppress a lot of these things. And it might have caused you to become angry as a child. You know, for some of you, you might have begun to build up this anger and aggression within you. And you even started to pick up on their energy because as an empath, which I feel that many of you were, you absorbed the energy that was around you. And so because you began to suppress your own gifts in order to not feel ostracized or made to feel as if you weren't good enough, you begin to, it's like if your gift began to work against you because you were starting to just absorb the energy of these people who was operating in their lower nature. And so you begin to pick up on aggressive behavior or pleasure seeking type of behaviors as you begin to get older, as you begin to grow. So this would be the sacral chakra. Okay, I'm not really too focused in on the, but this is how you can heal your sacral chakra. But the sacral chakra is what was affected as a child. I'm starting to see actually a lot of cards surrounding the sacral chakra, blocking intimate relationships. You begin to block out intimate relationships because those people that were closest to you, they were very emotionally unavailable. This is where the wounds begin. Emotionally unavailable loved ones that did not understand the fact that you were different, they did not embrace that. As a matter of fact, they said they blocked you for that. They made you feel like the black sheep for that. They made you feel as if you wasn't good enough for that. And so you suppressed it and began to push people off when it came to intimate relationships because you never wanted to feel that again. You never wanted to feel that energy of not being accepted. And so I feel like you carried this with you as you continue to grow, to just kind of, stay closed off, keep your heart blocked off. Because when you was open and when you were receptive as an innocent child, you were not received by those that naturally you would expect to accept you before anybody else. So then we have here the sacral chakra again, okay? So where are the wounds? Because once we can pinpoint the wounds, then we're going to move into how they affect you today. Separation between self and spirit. This is what ultimately ended up happening here. You ended up separating yourself on a spiritual level. It's like let me pick up this card, y'all. You begin to block out your intuitive wisdom, your natural gifts that was given to you as a child, because you came to realize that those gifts, again, were not appreciated by those who were around you, and it was only making you feel insecure. So you withheld these things and you separated yourself from the spiritual aspect of yourself, and then you begin to step into your lower nature, growing up, operating from that root and sacral chakra energy, which there's nothing wrong with those chakras, but when that's the dominant expression of who you are, is operating from the root chakra, which is all about stability, but it's not coming from a good space. It's not coming from a positive space because you did not have a good example of what a healthy root chakra looked like. A healthy root chakra looks like no lack mentality. You know that everything that you need, you have it right there in front of you. You're not overly focused in on materialism. You don't see a foundation as being what you have material wise. You see it as being what you are able to, the type of foundation and stability that you have within. Do you feel whole? Do you feel complete? Do you know that you're taken care of in spite of what your circumstances looks like in a moment, in a snapshot moment of your life? You know that you're taken care of today and every day that you're here. That's when you know that you're operating from a healthy root chakra and you're not overly possessive of materialism. You are able to release things and give freely, knowing that it's plentiful, knowing that it is always available to you. Even after you give, you receive it back tenfold. You just anticipate and expect that because you have healed from lack mentality. That's a healthy root chakra. Being in thriving mode, not survival mode. But I feel like you had maybe parents or loved ones that was close to you as a child who was operating from survival mode and who was operating from a space of dissatisfaction in life. And so many of them with the sacral chakra coming out so much, pleasure-seeking behaviors, maybe even some of them had multiple partners that you might have eyewitnessed coming up, or some of them as a child, if you didn't see them have partners at all, they was just the type of person who, if they had a very underactive sacral chakra, they might have been the type of person who they was so closed off to love that they became bitter. They were so closed off to intimate partnerships that they just became very bitter and mean and just aggressive they lacked empathy. They lacked an ability to love or ability to express love. And so they attracted to them people that was a reflection of that bitterness that they held within. And so they put more emphasis on what they had in terms of their material, but nothing in terms of the spiritual aspect of themselves. They was completely closed off. So that could be for some of you, okay? So there's two ends to this. There's a polarity to everything. But I do see that this is where the wounds begin, blocking off your sacral and your root chakra as a child. For some of you, because we're seeing sacral chakra so much, I already assumed that this was an issue, sexual trauma, shame associated with sexual trauma. So some of you may have dealt with molestation as a child. And so there was shame that was attached to that. Maybe some part of you, it began to make you feel as if you was not good enough. Okay, you might have begun to have sexual relationships at a very early age after being sexually abused by someone that was supposed to be maybe a family member or a friend of the family, whoever this might be. There was some sort of sexual trauma that caused you to end up not only blocking intimate relationships, like true loving relationships, but attracting to you people who had no desire for intimate relationships. They were all about pleasure seeking behaviors. And so for some of you, you ended up having an overactive sacral chakra as you continue to grow older, because that sexual appetite, you took on the spirit of that person who abused you, and you took on that Jezebel spirit of having an overactive sexual appetite. And so you probably indulged in things like pornography or sexual encounters that made you feel ashamed of yourself afterwards. This would also block off your creative nature. So when your sacral chakra is affected, I feel like your gifts, your spiritual gifts that you once possessed, they begin to fade off. You probably thought you had lost your spiritual gifts. I'm also hearing for some of you, the person who molested you actually took on your spiritual, like they took on the gifts that you possess because you were not using them at that time, when they actually caused the sexual trauma. Okay? They took on your intuitive wisdom when they caused the sexual trauma. So that sexual bond actually was a way for them to siphon your energy and your spiritual gifts. And so your gifts were blocked off because this person largely manipulated and held on to those things for a long time as if they belonged to them, because a large part of them felt that they owned you through that bitterness, that whatever this person, they just had some issues here. Okay. And so it's very clear that many of the wounds that you have since childhood deal with having that abandonment, that feeling of abandonment, feeling as if you were not good enough, feeling as if you were not maybe even smart enough, attractive enough, lack of fulfillment. There's another one that says rejects intimacy. So you begin, as you got older, you started to reject intimate relationships, okay? So let me just see. What else? I want to look into what caused these wounds. I feel like we've gotten very clear on where the wounds lie, because the majority of what's here deals with the sacral and the root chakra. We got a couple of them for the heart chakra. So ultimately, this caused you to block off your heart and to block off love. So what caused many of these traumas for you as a child? What is the cause of these wounds here? Okay, so we have here heartbreak and pain. You had your heart torn out multiple times as a child. And I feel like you didn't have anyone to release these things to. You didn't have anyone that you could actually express this heartache to, because you had parents around you or people around you who lacked empathy. They did not know how to sit down with you and hear you, to hear your voice, to give you the opportunity to express your pain and to nurture those wounds. You didn't have a loving mother figure that would comfort you. And if she did, there was just something that was missing here. Maybe it wasn't done enough. but there was something that was lacking in terms of your connection with those people that was around you as a child, and so you suffered. You suffered, and because you suffered, it's like you felt like your heart was being ripped in multiple directions. And this is that anger, this is that aggression, this is that, that pain that you had, feeling as if you had nowhere to release it. Okay, you have the Wheel of Fortune in the reverse. So I feel like it was this hamster wheel. The wounds was caused because it was the same type of scenarios that kept happening to you over and over again. Maybe different people, different environments, but it was you had to watch the same type of scenario play out over and over again in your life. And so maybe you went from home to feeling rejected, to school to feeling rejected. Maybe being rejected by your teachers or by your peers at school. Then moving up, maybe being rejected by, your relationships, your boyfriend or your girlfriend, as you begin to come up and have these sexual relationships. Then maybe it's like the trauma kept repeating itself for you. And so it was like over and over again, it's like you carried this heartbreak with you. It was like you could not release yourself from it. As you continued to grow up, it was like you always had to, you couldn't mend the pain because you kept, your heart was always being stretched in multiple directions here. And so this kept a very dark cloud over you. And I can't help but continue to look at this person, this miser. There was somebody who was in your life who was causing these wounds because they was holding back your God-given inheritance. Especially for those who are the chosen. There's always those people, I tell you all the time, who's surrounding the chosen, who want to take the gifts of the chosen, okay? And so the only way that they can hold on to your gifts, especially when you're born with these gifts, that intuitive wisdom, you have that natural connection, that higher level of consciousness from a young child, because inheritedly you was the one that was supposed to come through your lineage and to receive these gifts. You have that person who was around you who was very selfish, very wicked, very cruel. Some of these people was witches, okay? And they wanted to hold on to your gifts at all costs. And they knew that the only way that they could keep your gifts from you and keep you from awakening to your consciousness and rising into your divinity would be to keep you in this hamster wheel, this repeated cycle of heartache and pain. As long as you stayed in that low vibrational energy, living from your root chakra and your sacral chakra, living from your carnal nature, living from fear, living with a blocked heart chakra, then your gifts would always be dormant. And they would always be able to possess your inheritance because of you being asleep to that. The only way that they would come into a space of having to release is once you awaken to who you are. And once you begin to step back into the spiritual nature of yourself and recognizing that you are a spirit having a human experience, seeing these things for what they are, seeing these people for who they are, and coming into a realization of the importance of releasing, healing, and moving forward. But if they could keep you in this hamster wheel of pain, I feel like this is what you had someone in your life who was definitely targeting you in order to do this. So the wounds came from repeated trauma. The Nine of Wands is here to indicate that you have always been the person. This is the Wounded Warrior card. Going through the battles over and over again, but never giving up. Always continuing to push through and persevere, but you definitely became guarded. You definitely began to build this wall, this barrier to protect yourself from people. It made you hard. It hardened your heart towards people. And this is why you begin to reject intimacy. You begin to reject anything that felt like it would cause you to be vulnerable or too transparent, because you feared that if you opened up too much, that you would just get hurt again, that people would see that true nature, that loving kindness that you have within you, and they would just trample all over you all over again, okay? They would steal from you all over again. And so you held back from many people to protect yourself. So the wounds began with sexual trauma for some of you, being set aside and told that you were maybe not good enough, being told that you were mentally off balance because of your gifts, having people around you who rejected you, who were not open emotionally, not having someone that you could go to and cry to when you were in pain, having to suppress these things. And then because you suppressed it so much, this is the way that the Most High has it structured. When you suppress these things, He will allow for the same type of circumstances to happen throughout your life until you awaken to the fact that, okay, this is a repeated cycle. It's just coming from a different face. I'm a different age now. I'm in a different environment, but it's the repeated cycle of the same type of pain. So it's like you recognize that it felt the same, but for a long time, you was just in survival mode because the wounded warrior is in survival mode. And so the wounds were there because you suppressed them. So let's see what else is here in terms of, I'm doing these messages. They can get pretty emotional and they can get pretty heavy. And it's only because we're moving towards the year 2022. And, I feel that it is my calling to ensure that all of these things that need to come up get brought to the surface so that you can eliminate them, so that you can do what's necessary to purge them from your life. I know it's very cultural, especially for Black people, to cleanse your space, your physical environment, to boil up some black eyed peas, you know what I'm saying? But we got to go deeper than that when it comes to creating a new version of ourselves on a spiritual level, on a soul level. At this point, it's time to really dig, because many of you have released yourself from these types of people. Life placed you in a position where you're in hermit mode, you're isolated, you're not dealing with a lot of people, or you literally placed yourself in that because you knew that you had to go within to do the healing work. And so before we get to 2022, I would hope that these messages will help you to acknowledge, address, purge, heal, so that moving into this new year, you can have great expectations for where this is getting ready to take you, rather than expecting the same type of pain, the same type of cycles, the same type of traumas. No, it's time to create a new vision for yourself. But the only way you can create a vision that's actually going to allow you to grow is when you release all toxic visions, all toxic past. But you can't release it if you suppress it so much so that you left it there back at the age of 7 when you was harmed, or when that trauma took place, or at the age of 14 or 16 when you were sexually molested, or whatever the case may be. You left that pain there, at least you thought you did. You suppressed it so much that in your own mind, as long as you didn't have to feel, as long as you didn't have to relive that, then somehow you was able to escape it. Somehow it was no longer relevant in where you're at today. But it's time to recognize that, that card did come out. I think it did. Let me see. I thought I saw the card of suppression. I'm pretty sure I did. But I do strongly feel that this is the result of what has happened here. You suppressed those things and you left it back in your childhood. And so now it's time to address it and release it so that you can heal, okay? So let's see. What else caused the trauma was these tower moments, You never was able to have a solid, stable foundation throughout your childhood. And coming up into adulthood, adolescence into adulthood, you was not able to have a solid foundation because it was a tower moment after tower moment after tower moment. People manipulating, causing pain and trauma, constantly trying to hurt you. You just wanted to come out of this energy. You just wanted to free yourself from these types of people who was always out for blood, always out for shallow victories against you. Always sending these blackbirds your way. You always felt like you just carried that type of energy around you. And it's like you never was able to stay in a solid, in a stable foundation where And that's only because from the very beginning the root chakra was disrupted. And when the root chakra is disrupted, what happens? You end up being in survival mode. And in survival mode, there is no solid foundation because you never expect to have a solid foundation. You just expect to have to be in this energy of constantly just working hard and you know um pushing yourself to the max with an expectation in the back of your mind that you can lose it all at any given moment. So let me just keep working. Let me keep on, accumulating materialism. This might be something that you did coming up in order to try to create a safety net for yourself, but it was never enough because emotionally you was not fulfilled. Emotionally, these material things, they never fulfilled you, and you knew it wasn't going to be fulfilling because you saw that it didn't fulfill even that person or those people who was around you who used materialism as their foundation. With the number 4, that's all about foundations. They use a false sense of security even by stealing your gifts, by stealing your innocence. But they were still bitter as hell. How you sitting up here, you got all of these things, right? All of these material things, all of this so-called wealth, but you still can't even put a genuine smile on your face. You've been frowning so much. These people was frowning so much throughout their life that they just have a permanent frown mark on their face. I know them in my own so-called family. Just permanent frown, look like damn witches and devils. And this is the type of people that you were surrounded by. So these tower moments were divine. They were painful, true enough. They were painful, but they were wake-up calls to show you, come on, let me keep giving you these tower moments. I'm going to keep striking these false structures down so that you can clearly see that this is not who you are. This is not who I created you to be. This is what the Most High was calling you to do so that you can wake back up, step back into consciousness again. And so the wounds that have been held on to was the traumas. For some of you, this was by the hands of your own mother who caused many of these traumas for you. 8 of Cups is here in the reverse, and the 6 of Cups is right behind that. So part of what caused them is that you was never able to walk away from this abandonment. You always went back out of fear of not having anyone. You went back to these people from your childhood who hurt you. You might have walked away, but you always went back because there was a fear of being left out in the cold. There was a fear of being left alone. But ultimately, you always felt that way even when you went back to these people. From childhood all the way up into adulthood, it's like, you did this alone. This is just a boy with his dog that grew up right there next to his dog. You had to do this alone. But you was never able to fully walk away from these people because you felt a sense of loyalty, or because they're your blood, because they're your parents, because they're your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, whoever these people are, siblings. You felt that walking away meant being alone, and being alone felt too painful for you. Being alone felt too painful for you. And so what caused the wounds is always going back to that sense of being left out in the cold, abandonment, okay? So needing to heal from abandonment. So let's see what else is coming out here. I'm going to pull from this deck. Okay, unhealthy sexual fetish stems from childhood abuse. Okay, this is a totally different deck. Unhealthy sexual fetish. So this is a large part of where the sexual trauma came from and the shame. So whatever that sexual fetish is, like I told you, this person, for some of you who molested you, they took your gifts and they held on to them as almost like as trying to think of the word, but almost like as a leverage, as having this leverage over you where they will be able to constantly cause more traumas in your life. They took your sexual energy. They took your sexual energy from you, and with that, they took your love. They zapped the love right up out of your heart. That's where your gifts stem from. They come from a space of love first, because you can't receive, the Most High is not going to bless you with your spiritual gifts unless you have opened up your heart to love and you understand the importance of using these gifts from a space of love, because these gifts are powerful. And if you use these gifts from a space of where there's a lack of love, if the Most High was to grant you these gifts and to awaken you to these gifts, and you don't have love in your heart, then you're going to use them to manipulate people. And so that's not how this thing is supposed to work. And so this is why this person, this old bitter ass witch, or whoever this person is, male or female, they manipulated you, and they caused you to go into this energy of having this very unhealthy sexual fetish since childhood. Since you were abused in childhood, from that point on, you begin to indulge in things that brought a lot of shame. Okay? And so carrying that type of energy with you is very low vibrational. Shame and guilt is like at the bottom of the scale when it comes to low vibrational energy to carry. And so when you have that, these are things that will cause you to keep a lot of secrets. And so you go into circumstances moving forward in your adulthood, you might end up in relationships, but they're built on a false foundation, because in my other tower card, in my other deck, it shows a building where there's a lot of walls and very little windows. So there's a lot of secrets that end up building up because of these unhealthy sexual fetishes. And ultimately what happens is, it's not built on a solid foundation. It's not built on honesty. It's not built on integrity. You have all of these, this shame and this guilt. And so you end up acting it out through aggression, through anger, blocking off intimacy, because a large part of you doesn't want this person to be able to look you directly in your eyes. You know, if you're talking about relationships, because there's a large part of you that's ashamed of what's behind those eyes. That's ashamed of, you know, and in fear that they might see something that you suppressed, all of these things that you suppressed for so long. So you've had a cyclic wheel of the same type of pain happening over and over again. This says, fear makes you self-sabotage. So you might have been the one that was, initiating a lot of this self-sabotaging behavior in your relationships and friendships. You know, for some of them, the thing is, you know, I'm not going to say that it's something that you should feel guilty about, because you were likely attracting to you people who were not emotionally available just like you. You were likely attracting to you people who held sexual secrets, who had some sort of deviant behavior or pleasure-seeking behavior, just like you. It might not have looked like the secrets that you were holding on to, but they definitely was matching you in your energy some way, shape, or form. And so likely you was attracting to you people who were not your divine partner. They were karmic partners that were there to be that wake-up call, to you know, where the Most High would use them as the one where, okay, I'm going to come in and strike lightning over this thing. Let me see if I can wake you up again, so that you can see what you're attracting to yourself. What you're attracting to yourself that's repeatedly causing this pain. Doesn't it feel familiar? Have you been able to see? Can you wake up and see where the root cause of this is coming from? This is what the Most High was trying to do, to get you to awaken again, to come back into this energy of consciousness. And so you self-sabotaged a lot of things. Maybe even pursuits, you know, whether it's career pursuits or creative pursuits. You probably had a lot of good ideas, but then that spark and that passion will be zapped right up out of you, especially if you were still operating from that unhealthy sexual nature, still doing this in adulthood. Then it was literally zapping your creative gifts, causing creative blockages. Okay, because if the sacral chakra is overactive or underactive, it's going to cause a blockage in your creative abilities, your ability to co-create. And so you might have had things that you was passionate about, ideas that you was passionate about, people that you were initially passionate about, but you self-sabotaged them because there was something within you that told you you did not have what it took to carry it all the way through. And so a large part of you intuitively knew that yes, you was not operating in the right energy. You was not vibrating high enough in order to actually carry these things all the way through. And so yes, you know, self-sabotage is a natural reaction when you have yet to heal. So for many of you, I strongly suggest that you begin to do work on your sacral and your root chakra. Look into ways to heal your sacral and your root chakra, to heal yourself from sexual trauma. Writing down, burning, and releasing is a very powerful tool. You might even want to write a letter to the person who sexually abused you and burn it, because for those people, they're so stubborn and so selfish and so bitter that they won't even receive and acknowledge your pain. Because for them, they saw it as being a come up, stealing your innocence from you, stealing your spiritual gifts. They saw it as being a come up because they still, even to this day, this person is gray and old. They still operate from a space of selfishness. They're still very much so in their carnal nature, and it's all about materialism. And so they would be happy to leave you feeling abandoned all over again, to make you, to reject your pain when you come to express that. So you might want to just write a letter to that person and burn it. Cut cords with this person in the spiritual realm. Write out, I release myself from all sexual traumas attached to XYZ. I release myself from all obstacles and stumbling blocks that have been placed in my way when it comes to my creative growth, or my ability to be a co-creator of my life, because of the sexual attachment to this person, the person who may have molested you. And if it's not molestation and it's you, where you were just unhappy growing up and you found yourself seeking, going to, you know, try to find ways of making yourself feel good, and you just found yourself wandering off and just getting into sexual connections that really were meaningless, but they felt good in the moment. They activated that dopamine. They made you feel good, but you accumulated maybe a certain number of sexual partners that you're ashamed of, or might have delved in things that you was ashamed of in terms of your sexual nature. Then you want to also write down, burn, and release when it comes to those connections. It's time to release this energy from your life, okay? Because this is where you block your heart. Your heart has been blocked off because of the shame, because of the guilt, because of the insecurities. So once you clear that out, then you can begin to open up your heart again, because that's an act of self-love. Clearing those things from your life and forgiving yourself for doing these things, and knowing that you were the victim. You were the victim of other people's selfishness. You were the victim of other people's selfishness and other people's carnal nature, other people's perversions. And so you have to forgive yourself for not being able to see that at the time, or not listening to your intuition at the time, or becoming victim or prey to these people at the time. You have to forgive yourself that you suppressed it and you acted it out throughout your adulthood. But in your adulthood, you felt like, okay, well, this person is no longer doing this to me, so now it's all on me. Now I'm the one. I have to be ashamed of who I am because I'm doing this. This person is no longer doing this to me, but you don't even realize that that cord connection that that person created with you from a child all the way up until now, that person has been able to have a stronghold over your life in terms of your sexual energy and your sexual nature, your creative nature. So now that you know, it's time to take your power back and do what's necessary, using the tools that I've given you here, but also your own intuitive wisdom. Go deep. Ask your spiritual team. I'm telling y'all, your holy angels, your ancestors of love and light, first of all, going to the Most High God and giving thanks to Him that He's blessed you with such a beautiful spiritual team that's always around you, waiting for you to just say the words. Say, I need some help. Help me to recognize those things that I am suppressing. Help me to see them clearly, so that I can do the work to release them and to heal myself and to free myself from these things that have kept me bound. Let me see what else is coming out here, y'all. You are there to avoid loneliness. Isn't that what we just spoke about? For some of you, this says release your ex, okay? You are there. So release your ex. This could be a person that you're no longer with, that you're still emotionally holding on to, or this could be a person that you are with that needs to become an ex. Because this says you are there to avoid loneliness. So for some of you, remember we saw the Eight of Cups, these cards here that came out together that showed that you always end up going back. You always end up going back out of fear of being left alone, out of fear of being abandoned, because this is how you felt as a child. You felt alone. And so you're not able to walk away from even unhealthy connections, even though you feel abandoned within the connection. They're introducing that same trauma to you over and over and over again. That same familiar pain that you have become comfortable with. I mean, I know that sounds a little crazy, but you've become comfortable with being uncomfortable because it's giving you permission to not have to feel. And the only thing that you've become comfortable with feeling is heartbreak, because this is all you know. It's time to release this person. You are there to avoid loneliness. So this person is, if you got a partner that you're with, or maybe this is friendships or family members, whoever this is, you're only around these people to avoid feeling lonely, because outside of that, there's no substance there. There's nothing there that's going to allow you to expand. There's nothing there that's going to allow you to grow. There's nothing there that's actually going to introduce happiness or fulfillment into your life. You're just there just to be able to say, I got this person that I hang with sometimes, or I got this person that I lay next to, but they're not emotionally available to me because I'm not emotionally available to myself, because I don't know how to love, because I never felt love. The only type of love I ever felt, or anything that ever seemed like it could become as close to love, was sexual trauma, sexual abuse. And so then I began to use my sexual energy as a way of creating connections. But that's as far as it went. It never went past the surface. And so you find yourself trapped and stuck in these situations where you end up with people that's all about materialism. They all about what can they get from you? What can you give me? They deplete you, and they come back in to reintroduce that trauma. It's time to jump up off this hamster wheel. I feel like you've learned the lessons. You've come into this space where you are seeking answers, because otherwise you wouldn't be here on my channel. You're seeking these answers. And so these answers are here now, presented before you, so that you can go ahead, acknowledge them, and address them, purge them, heal, and now grow. You deserve more. You spent enough of your life from childhood. You're talking about from childhood all the way up until now. You've done enough. You spent enough of your life. You've spent enough of your life being in pain. Now you owe it to yourself to spend the rest of your life in happiness, having true completion, having true people around you that appreciate your gifts, that appreciate your transparency. Okay? So, look at this. It says, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. I told you this earlier. Forgive yourself. For some of you, the stronghold might be marijuana. You might have certain, like I said, pleasure-seeking behaviors because you want to numb out. Okay? That's a large part of the sacral chakra. So releasing yourself from that habit. You know, we could be transparent. I used herb for many years, okay? And it was something that I used as a way of, numbing myself out and trying to just feel some sort of pleasure, because I had lacked zeal and passion for a long time too, because there was a lot of people that I could not relate to. And I had a blocked heart chakra. I'd held myself back, from pain. But this is we can relate in that way, especially the chosen, we can relate in that way because we all had to climb that uphill battle. We all had to be that coal that was in the fire, to become the diamond on the other side. And so it don't feel good. And so you end up numbing yourself out using certain things. And so forgive yourself, but also know that a large part of you holding on to anything that whether it's herb, cigarettes, food, sex, anything, alcohol, overworking, materialism, all of these lower chakra things that keep you in your lower nature is largely due to needing to heal your root and sacral chakra. So then this says you feel emotionally withdrawn from your partner. So for many of you, that person that you're with, you don't even have love for that person. You don't have any true love for that person. And so it's the more that you heal yourself, the more that you will wake up to the fact that person needs to be released. I'm not saying you can just get up tomorrow and walk away from that person, because One of the reasons why you haven't done it is because you fear feeling abandoned. But once you heal from abandonment issues, which is the root chakra, once you heal from abandonment issues, then you might wake up and look at that person very different, okay? Through healed eyes, through your spiritual eyes, you wake up and you look at that person laying next to you very, very different. And then it's like, okay, I've gotten the lesson. Now I understand why I need to release you from my life, because the new version of me, the healed version of me, the version of me that loves myself, understands that you're just not it. And you become okay with being alone for a time, because you recognize that in being healed, you create that stability and that inner knowing, independent of all others. That's when you know that you are ready for your divinely created partner, when you can create happiness independently, free of all other external factors. I'm talking about even materialism, even money, even certain careers, even certain images. We stepping outside of the matrix. We talking about going within and knowing that all you need is yourself, the Most High God, your spiritual team, and those people who genuinely love you. And when the time comes, the right person will be, you're going to attract the right person, because remember, you've been attracting the wrong people to get the lessons. Once you get the lessons, what do I always say? You get the blessings. So that's what I have for you all. I hope this message it brought you some clarity in terms of those inner child wounds. If you feel like I need to do a part 2, just let me know, because there's so much that can be brought forward. I had a few more questions, but I feel like this might have covered it. So I love you all. Let's continue to do the work. Let's work in unison, because when you heal, that uplifts humanity as a whole. When we all heal together, it uplifts humanity as a whole, and it breaks down the structure of the enemy, because this is what the enemy did not want. If too many of us heal, then what do we need with their system? What do we need with that structure? That's a structure that keeps you codependent. You need that's the structure was built on codependency and fear. But once you release those things and you allow yourself to heal, then you begin to recognize that you are infinitely abundant. You are infinitely, love is infinitely available to you, and so is everything that you need. So I love you all. Email me if you want a private reading. Thank you all for the likes and subscribes. And I'll talk to you all next time.